After all the hype and anticipation, Mewgenics is finally here, and honestly, it's every bit as chaotic, disgusting, and hilarious as people hoped it would be. From the very first run to the moment the credits roll, and even hundreds of hours after that, the game just keeps throwing absurd situations at you. One minute you're carefully planning your strategy, and the next everything has turned into a ridiculous mess of mutations, abilities, and pure nonsense. And somehow, that chaos is exactly what makes it so fun. Even when things get brutally difficult, you can't help but smile at how wild everything becomes. Now, if you've been exploring the sewers for a while, you probably know exactly where this is going, because sooner or later you're going to run into Boris. And Boris is not exactly a polite welcome committee. This massive sludge-covered sewer monster can feel overwhelming the first time you face him. But don't worry, because with the right preparation and a simple strategy, this slimy boss is much more manageable than he looks. In this video, we're going to break down exactly how to defeat Boris in Mewgenics, so you can finally crawl out of the sewers and move on to somewhere slightly less disgusting, like the caves. Yes, somehow that's the improvement. I'm quickly moving on to the video. Before we start, if you enjoy these types of list videos, don't forget to like the video and subscribe. Enjoy watching. Boris is one of those bosses in Mewgenics that can completely ruin your run if you walk in unprepared. You encounter him deep in the sewers during the first act, and he basically serves as a final skill check before you are allowed to head back home or continue your adventure into the caves. On paper, he does not look overly complicated, but do not let that fool you. Boris comes with a huge health pool, hits extremely hard, and has the annoying ability to punish your units even when you are the one attacking. That combination alone can turn a normal fight into a disaster very quickly if you are not paying attention to positioning and timing. What really makes Boris dangerous is how easily players underestimate him. He looks like a giant blob of goo, but that blob can both take a serious beating and dish out a surprising amount of damage. If you rush the fight or get careless, he will absolutely punish you for it. That is why it is important to approach this encounter with the right units and a clear strategy in mind. Once you understand how he works and what to watch out for, the fight becomes much more manageable. But until then, Boris is more than capable of stopping your run right there in the sewers. Let us take a quick look at some basic information about Boris. In Mewgenics, Boris appears as a final boss encounter during Act 1, specifically in the sewers region. That means he is essentially the last big obstacle standing between you and the next part of your adventure. Boris comes with a maximum health pool of 200 health points, which makes the fight feel long if your team is not dealing enough damage. Because of that large health pool and his ability to punish careless attacks, the battle often turns into a test of patience, positioning, and smart decision making. Defeating Boris can also reward you with some interesting loot. Two of the possible drops currently known are the spring accessory and the tick necklace. However, it is important to remember that boss rewards in Mewgenics are based on random number generation, so you will not always receive the same items every time you win the fight. There is a good chance you will see different rewards across multiple runs. As more fights happen and more drops are discovered, the list of possible rewards continues to grow, which makes beating Boris even more satisfying each time you manage to take him down. When it comes to building a team for the Boris fight in Mewgenics, having a balanced composition makes a huge difference. One of the safest and most reliable setups is running a fighter, hunter, tank, and cleric together. This group covers pretty much everything you need for the encounter. The fighter brings solid damage with a boost to strength and a bit of extra speed, making them great for consistent pressure on Boris. They are not the fastest or smartest unit on the field, but they hit hard and get the job done when it matters. The hunter plays a very different role but is just as important. With high dexterity and luck, the hunter excels at dealing damage from a distance and creating opportunities for your team. They are a bit fragile due to lower constitution and speed, so positioning matters a lot here. If you keep them safe and use their range properly, the hunter can chip away at Boris throughout the fight while staying out of the worst danger zones. Then there is the tank, which is exactly what it sounds like. With a massive boost to constitution, this unit is built to absorb punishment. The tank can stand in Boris's path, control space in the arena, and give the rest of your team breathing room to operate. Even though the tank sacrifices a bit of dexterity and intelligence, their durability is what allows your strategy to actually function during a long fight like this. Finally, the cleric ties the whole team together. With bonuses to charisma and constitution, they are surprisingly sturdy while still being able to support the entire group. The biggest advantage the cleric provides is reliable healing. If Boris manages to land a few strong hits, the cleric can quickly stabilize your team and keep the fight under control. You could replace the cleric with a mage if you prefer a more aggressive playstyle, but that removes your ability to freely heal the team. For this particular fight, especially early in the game, having that healing safety net makes the encounter much more forgiving. What really makes Boris tricky in Mewgenics is not some complicated set of mechanics, but the combination of his massive health bar and the fact that he can damage your units just by moving through them. That alone can catch you off guard the first time you fight him, because it means careless positioning will cost you a lot of health very quickly. Aside from that, Boris is actually pretty straightforward, with his most dangerous move being a heavily telegraphed charging attack that you can usually see coming from a mile away. Once you learn how to guide him around the arena and keep your units positioned properly, the fight becomes much more manageable. At that point, the battle is mostly about staying calm, controlling the space, and not making careless mistakes that let him roll right over your team. Let us start with Boris's most common action, simply moving around the arena. It sounds harmless, but it is actually one of the main ways he deals damage. When Boris moves, he can step one space in any of the 4 cardinal directions, but because of his huge body, he ends up covering 4 tiles in that direction. Every tile he moves through becomes a damage zone, meaning any unit caught there is going to take a hit. To make things more intense, he usually performs this movement about 3 times per round, which means you will constantly need to adjust your positioning and keep your team spread out. Since you cannot really block or dodge this movement damage, the safest approach is to avoid ending your turn directly next to him whenever possible. If you stand beside Boris, there is a good chance he will simply roll over your units on his next move. That said, there are moments where you can turn this into an advantage. If your tank still has plenty of armor, you can intentionally position them to land back attacks when Boris moves past. Back attacks not only deal extra damage, but can also push him back a few spaces, giving your team a bit more control over the battlefield. This is where Boris becomes a little more interesting, because he does not stop moving once his turn ends. Every time Boris takes damage, he automatically moves 1 tile toward the unit that attacked him. That means every single hit you land can shift his position on the battlefield. If one of your units is standing between the attacker and Boris, and they are close enough, Boris will simply move right into them and deal damage along the way. Because of that, you need to be careful about when and where you attack from. Sometimes the best decision is actually to hold your attack if it would cause him to collide with one of your own units. While this mechanic can feel annoying at first, it is also something you can absolutely turn into an advantage. This is where the hunter really shines. Since the arena is quite small and the hunter has strong ranged attacks, you can damage Boris from a distance and intentionally pull him across the map. By attacking from far away, Boris will slowly move toward the hunter, but only 1 tile at a time. If you manage the distance properly, he will never actually reach the hunter before you reposition again. In practice, this means you can essentially guide Boris around the arena like you are leading him on a leash. Keep your hunter at a safe distance and use them to pull Boris in a specific direction while your other units rotate to the opposite side of the map. Your tank or fighter can step in to draw attention when needed, giving the hunter time to reposition. Once Boris is far enough away from your main group, the hunter can unload abilities and basic attacks, then back off again before Boris gets too close. If you repeat this pattern, you can slowly chip away at his massive health pool while staying mostly out of danger. Boris still has one more dangerous move you need to watch out for, and that is his trample dash. On the final turn of every round, Boris can charge in any of the 4 cardinal directions, crashing through everything in his path. If one of your units is standing in that line, they are going to get flattened and take a huge amount of damage. It is easily his hardest hitting ability, and most units simply cannot survive it comfortably. Getting caught by this attack can turn the fight around very quickly, so it is something you always need to keep in the back of your mind. The good news is that this attack is very predictable. Boris always performs the trample dash on his last turn of the round, which gives you time to prepare. As long as you avoid standing directly in front of him, behind him, or directly to his sides when that final turn is approaching, you should be safe. If you are following the strategy we talked about earlier, this usually happens naturally. Your hunter attacks from range and then repositions, while the rest of your team rotates around the arena, keeping space between themselves and Boris. The real danger comes later in the fight. Because Boris has such a massive health pool, the battle can drag on long enough for players to lose focus and forget that the trample dash is coming. That is when mistakes happen. If one of your units does get hit by it, immediately have your cleric heal them, because they will probably be extremely low on health unless it was your tank taking the hit. Once things are stabilized, you can go right back to the same plan. Kite Boris around the arena with your hunter, while your other units rotate, manage positioning, and slowly chip away at his health until he finally goes down. The video ends here. See you in another video. Don't forget to subscribe.